Hi, this is Shilpa here. This time I'm going to share with you a case of stammering, and it was one of the very first cases I saw in the very first week of starting the clinic, the charitable clinic I used to go to when I began my practice. So this was a father who came with his 7-year-old child. Now, both the father and the son had a very severe stammering problem, and they wondered whether homeopathy could help them. And it was a challenge to actually understand and get any sort of information because there was a severe problem, especially with the father. So, what I realized that the father was more worried for the young son. So he mentioned that he did not want him to feel that humiliation in school because the other kids are teasing him. So the child and the father did not have the financial means to actually take him to a speech therapist or do some other help. And coming to the charitable clinic was a way of getting some sort of help, possibly at that emotional level too. So now at this stage, I never treated a kid with stammering before. And so I did not really know what was exactly the scope of homeopathy for this child and his dad. However, because I knew that there was such a big emotional component and obviously a genetic component to it, we spoke about helping him, cope with the problem in a much better way. So that was how we started off. So I turned to speak with the child because that was the major problem for the father, because he had accepted his own problem. Now, when I started speaking with the child, he got very nervous. And I could see the dynamics between the son and the father, because the father now seemed very desperate that he spoke with me clearly. And so he coaxed the child to answer my questions, or if not, just greet me and say hi. And, so that was like, this made the child much more conscious and he stammered even more. And so I actually offered the child to play with some toys and diverted my attention to the father and said, all right, we'll speak and you can explain about your son. So it was hard to get the information, but whatever I could get was that he had just started school. So whenever he was very tensed whenever he was very, very tensed or angry, the stammering aggravated. Now, because the other kids teased him, he often got very physical and very, very angry. And when he got angry, his whole body trembled, and that made him much more nervous, and he stammered even more, especially when he spoke in that excited state. So that was what I could manage to get from the father, because there were no other symptoms. The physicals were fine. He had no other health issues as such. So I turned to the father. How about him? And he said he had a similar temper. When he was younger, he had a problem managing his temper too. And then there was, I think, one question asked about his anger, and he mentioned that it was no use getting to their level and retaliating back. And he found it was quite difficult for him, even as an adult, to control his anger at times. And it ended up, losing his appetite and not being able to sleep well. So that was all I could gather from both of them. And there were lots of similarities between the father and the son. And as I've mentioned before in many of my blogs before, whenever in a consult, I find there are common connections with the mom and the child, or the dad and the child. More often than not, we find that there are similar remedies. And sometimes the parent can actually express their deeper feelings well, and the child is expressing the symptoms, but the father or the mother have coped up with those emotions and they actually put them in. So this is how I found the child is presenting the uncompensated picture, whereas the mom or the dad is presenting the compensated picture. So let's see what are the keynotes for the son. So the main thing for me was the stammering and the trembling when he was very, very angry. And another thing which I realized, that when he was very angry, the voice got weaker. So not just the stammering increased, but the voice became weaker. And also excited. Whenever he was excited, it aggravated him. So these were the keynotes for the son. And the remedy was prescribed based on my medical knowledge, because I had seen these clinical symptoms being used for this remedy quite often in my practice. However, I've just given you a quest analysis here from the HomeoQuest software just to let you know how you can actually work this out. So stammering, trembling when anger, voice weak when angry, and excited aggravates. And you see Staphylococcus aureus comes up very strongly. And Staphylococcus aureus is known to be a remedy which is for all that humiliation and insult and anger which is suppressed, as we all know. So the father's state was Staphylococcus aureus too, but he was a compensated Staphylococcus aureus, whereas the son, he expressed his anger and he was violent and he could abuse back and he could actually show. So as we know, Herring writes that when insulted becomes too dignified to fight, subdues his what, and he went home sick, trembling and exhausted. So that was exactly what the father mentioned. You don't come to their level. You just get it in, go home, and then you are exhausted, trembling, and lose your appetite and your sleep. So he was given Staphylococcus aureus and also the son. Both of them got Staphylococcus aureus 200, and it was a dose taken once a week for every week for a month. Now, this was one of the most followed up cases in that clinic because they came for about a year, and the progress was really very, very encouraging. The son basically responded very well. So his anger came down, his speech got more fluent and distinct, and even the teachers at school noticed that there was a marked improvement in the behavior and the speech of the child. The father, he relaxed mentally and his speech became less hurried, but there was not as distinct a change in his speech condition as the child. But obviously, because of the intensity of the anger and the emotions going down, his speech got more better comparatively. So that was about Staphylococcus aureus, and that was about the way you can get keynotes even if you don't have a huge elaborate history to go to, to fall back on. So this was one of my most favorite remedies in that clinic, and I think these were the keynotes I've used so many times, from neuralgias to paralysis to hemorrhoids, to every condition having that sort of an anger with trembling and the voice becoming weak. So these were my two keynotes for Staphylococcus aureus, which worked very well. So I hope you enjoyed this case, and I would love to hear from you as well. What are your favorite remedies, and what are the keynotes which you've clinically confirmed in your practice for your acute cases? And if you can share them here, that'd be great. Thank you very, very much, and I look forward to see you next time. Bye-bye.